Hello, boys and girls. Dee Mitchell here, and I would like to talk to you about the elements of poetry. These are the things that make poetry interesting, make it special, make it fun to read. And so, as good readers, we should know what they are. One of the things that we are probably all very familiar with about poetry is that sometimes poems can rhyme. They can have words that have the same ending sounds, such as rain, train, or crane. Another thing that we should know about poems is that um, there's often a rhythm to them, like a beat of a drum, like music. And authors do this again because it makes the poem fun to read, interesting to read. Um, Poetry is also full of describing words, words that tell how things look, how they sound, how they feel, smell, taste. This kind of reminds me of our senses. And we use our senses to really help us understand the world around us. So it makes sense for an author to use describing words that help us to picture what they are seeing in their mind, to help us to understand the poem or the poetry that has been written by using our senses. Poems also have visual patterns. Sometimes the stanzas are written in a special way, sometimes there are extra spaces just to make the poem visually appealing or interesting to read and really making us as readers want to pay closer attention. Lastly, poems are full of figurative language. And figurative language simply means there are words that are used that don't really mean exactly what they say. Such as, it's raining cats and dogs, or another example, she had a smile a mile wide. Those are examples of figurative language, or as busy as a bee, which happens to be a simile. A simile compares to things using like or as. And so, as we get into poetry, understand that poems are full of figurative language, full of words to describe. You may find words that rhyme, you may find a rhythm, and you may find a visual pattern. Today, though, I want you to be looking out for, especially for the figurative language that you're going to encounter. So let's go into this text called Water Rolls, Water Rises. We may have seen this before. As a matter of fact, I'm sure some of us have because we've touched on this earlier this year. And so let's think about what this text is mostly about. The title is Water Rolls, Water Rises. So I'm imagining again that this text that we've looked at tells us about some of the things that happens with water. Water rolls onto the shore, under the sun, under the moon. Water rises into soft fog, weaves down the street, strokes an old cat. Hmm. Let's think about that, boys and girls. I know that fog cannot stroke a cat. It doesn't have hands. When we stroke a cat, we take our hands and we rub it softly and slowly. So I'm imagining that this is what the author wanted me to think about. The author wanted me to think about what I would do if I were stroking a cat, because the author wanted me to understand how the fog moves slowly and calmly down the street. And of course, we know this is another thing that water does. It rises, becomes fog. So that was a great example, boys and girls, of figurative language. And we know that figurative language is a part of the elements of poetry, the things that make up poetry, that makes poetry interesting and special to read. We know that authors incorporate all of these things into their poems because they want us to be entertained as readers. They want their poems to really touch us, to really help um, us to see what they see in their mind. So again, as we go on through um, this unit of looking at poems, looking at poetry, I want you to be mindful of the different elements of poetry that the authors will incorporate, also that you enjoy your experience of reading poetry. So happy reading, boys and girls.